About 4 to 5 minutes into the movie, Joji leaned over and whispered something into Mike's ear. For a second or two, Mike just looked at Joji quizzically, and then the two of them popped up like a pair of Mexican jumping beans and motioned for me to come with them. My heart was racing and my palms were sweating with anticipation for what I was sure was about to happen. "Where are you going?" Mark whispered. "Why do you always ask me that?" I asked back, shaking my backpack in his face. He grinned knowingly. "Go get Tiger." He teased and swatted me on the backside. As I was trying to get out without stepping on anyone's toes, I looked down at Damien and saw that he was sacked out. For half a second, I thought about waking him up and bringing him along, but then I decided I didn't want to risk missing out on any potential encounter opportunities that might present themselves with Joji and Mike. The three of us stepped out of the door and had to stand there in the hallway, shielding our eyes until they adjusted to the bright lights. "Max," Mike began to say, "Joji has a problem." I didn't look at Joji, but at his pants, and sure enough, he'd had a leak. It wasn't surprising considering how much he'd already had to drink since the start of the movie. "Wow, I guess he does," I said. "He only brought one change with him. Can he use one of your diapers?" Mike asked, making sure he didn't say it too loud. There wasn't anyone else around, but one can't be too careful. "Oh yeah, sure," I said, disappointed that I wasn't going to get to assist in the changing. I decided to try my luck anyway. I directed my eyes right into Joji's dark slanted eyes. "Do you need my help getting cleaned up and changed?" Joji was about to answer when Mike quickly said, "No, I will help him." Reluctantly, I reached into my backpack and pulled out the second superhero emergence diaper changing kit and handed it to Mike. Mike had not yet seen the kit and looked at it as if I'd just handed him a plate of liver and spinach. "It has everything you will need inside of it. Just unzip it and open it up when you get in the bathroom," I told them. No sooner had I said it than the two of them took off running like they were being chased by a bear. As I slung my backpack over my left shoulder, I began to wonder if the emergency diaper kit was such a good idea. I mean, the potential was there for the kit to have more encounters than I could. Gosh, am I jealous of a notebook filled with diapering supplies? I mumbled to myself. I didn't go back into the theater, but instead, waited by the door for a few minutes. After a while, curiosity got the better of me and I began to meander toward the bathroom. I stopped at the entrance to the bathroom and listened, but I couldn't hear anything. So, with a deep breath, I stepped into the bathroom. However, I didn't see Joji or Mike anywhere. There were two guys who looked to be in their 20s, standing at the urinals, so I had to be careful as I tried to peek under the stalls to check if I could see two boys standing in one stall. Sure enough, the last stall, which was the largest due to being the stall designated for handicapped people, had two pairs of legs. I could hear mumbles and giggles coming from inside and I wanted so badly to knock and be let in, but I was scared too. Finally, I turned and walked back out of the bathroom and back to the theater where Underdog was playing. Mind you, I didn't go back in, but instead, stood there waiting for Joji and Mike to return, which they did after about another 10 minutes. The two of them were walking kind of fast and looking mysterious. Joji had his hands crossed over the front of his pants, the way boys do when they are naked and are trying to hide their nudity. "What have you two been up to?" I asked them. Mike shot me a wicked grin and then said, "Joji can't get his pants zipped." Joji punched Mike. "You said you wouldn't tell." "So what?" Mike said, smiling and rubbing his arm. "Let me help," I told Joji as I knelt down in front of him. He was reluctant to move his hands, so I took hold of his wrists and forced his hands to his side. "Well, there's the problem. You got your shirt stuck in your zipper," I said as I took hold of the zipper and tried to pull it down to free his shirt. While I was doing that, I was getting an up-close view of the diaper bulging under his pants and I could see a bit of it through the open part of his zipper. "Boy Joji, you really got it caught," I commented as I tugged with all my might. Finally, the shirt and zipper came free of one another. "Oh, there we go," I said. I stuck 2 fingers into the zipper to tuck the shirt out of the way. I then removed my fingers and zipped up his pants for him. When I looked into Joji's eyes again, he was grinning and blushing at the same time. "All right you two, let's go finish watching the movie," I said, swatting them both on their diapered rear ends. Thanks, Daddy Maximum, Joji said with a giggle, and it was my turn to blush. That is when I remembered the diapering kit. Where's the notebook I gave you? I asked Mike. Mike smacked himself in the forehead, spun on his heels and took off running toward the bathroom again, leaving Joji and me standing there alone. Sorry, we kind of forgot it, Joji said with the most innocent eyes. I suppose you were more worried about your zipper, huh? I asked. Yeah, he said, kicking at the carpet with the toe of his shoes. Mike soon returned with the notebook and his eyes were as big as dinner plates. What's the matter? I asked him. Someone found it in the bathroom and was carrying it to the ticket counter, he said, out of breath. You think they opened it? Joji asked. Yeah, Mike answered, and I had to tell him it was mine. Mike handed it to me and I quickly stuffed it back into the secret compartment of my backpack as the three of us went back into the theater. I don't remember any part of the remainder of the movie because I was too busy sitting there fantasizing about Joji and Mike, who were sitting in front of me, giggling and sharing that enormous drink. When the movie was over, all of us, including Joji, stayed through the ending credits, which was good because we got to see all the bloopers from the making of the movie. If you ask me, the bloopers were funnier than the movie itself. Once the credits were over, we stood and found that everyone else had left already and two guys were standing at the back waiting to clean up the theater for the next movie. We walked out and once the door closed behind us I asked, let's see a show of hands. Who needs changed before we head home? I had my eye on Joji to see how he reacted and he did so just as I expected he might. He blushed so red that his face was almost glowing crimson. I wasn't surprised when every one of my boys said they did, Mark included. However, once Joji saw all their hands he seemed to lose some of his bashfulness because he too raised a hand. For just a moment I wondered if I had that many diapers left in my backpack. Thankfully I did have just enough. Sadly, I didn't get to change Joji, nor did I get to see him changing. Damien was the only one who didn't take a diaper into one of the toilet stalls to get changed. So while the others were taking care of themselves, I helped Damien up onto the changing table and to my surprise he fell asleep almost the instant he was horizontal. It was much easier to get him cleaned up and into a dry diaper with him sleeping. I finished before any of the others and carried Damien out of the bathroom. Unless any of you needs help, Damien and I will be waiting out in the lobby, I announced. I received no reply so I carried the sleeping Damien out with me. Once outside the bathroom I found a bench near the arcade where I could deposit him but he heard the video games and woke right back up again. He begged for some quarters and I was about to give him a couple when the boys came out of the bathroom all giggling and carrying on. That was the best movie, Mike said. Damien ran to Mark and begged for another piggyback ride which he got without delay. I lead the group out to the lobby where we found that it was spitting rain outside. Ah man, Mark groaned. I ain't walking home in that stuff, Sean said. Okay, I better call home and see if I can get us a ride, I said. Wait, maybe my mom can give you guys a ride, Joji offered. He didn't wait for a reply. He ran out of the cinema and out to a car that was waiting by the curb. A moment later, Joji turned and waved for us all to come out. Joji and Mike got in the front of the car while the rest of us climbed in the back seat. Where to, boys? Joji's mom asked. She wasn't what I would call a hot mama, but she wasn't too hard on the eyes either. She had dark hair, but not as dark as Joji's, and she had big green eyes. It was clear that Joji took after his father and not his mother. Thanks for giving us all a ride, Mrs. I trailed off, not knowing what to call her, because I didn't know what Joji's last name was. Kim, Holly Kim, she said. You have a pretty name, Sean said, and then he went bright red when he realized that he'd actually said it aloud. During the ride home, we learned that Joji's father and mother were divorced and that Joji's father had moved back to Japan after the divorce. Joji lives with his father for 6 months, and then comes to the United States to live with his mother for 6 months. Mrs. Kim was kind enough to drop each one of us off at our own homes. First, we dropped off Sean, then Mark, then Damien, and finally we stopped at my house. Mike had decided that he wanted to go home with Joji instead of going back to his own house. I again felt the monster of envy, because I so badly wanted to go spend the rest of the day with those two.